Welcome, Bulldog fans. Yes, it's game week. The 2017 season about to kick off this weekend, ninth season for Coach Dan Mullen. And, of course, that could be a story in and of itself. You know, who in 2009 thought that this coach would still be here at this point? But here we are, the Bulldogs going for another bowl season. I know they technically a losing record last year, but when you win a bowl game, you feel like you come out a winner. Right now, we're overlooking a nice, beautiful golden egg down here in the lobby. So a lot of great momentum still from last December. Here it is in August, and yet that momentum still feels a little like, Steve, like we're riding that wave.
It's true, David, and it's like something Emery Billard told me years ago. If you win the Egg Bowl, grass is greener, the air is cleaner, your girlfriend is prettier. So that has kind of carried over, and it's very reminiscent of the 2013 season. If you recall, David, it was the state had to kind of scratch and claw, and then you win that ball game, and you really kind of find a sense of yourself. And that's kind of what happened late last year with Nick Fitzgerald kind of emerging as one of the stars in this league, and now he returns for his second year as a starting quarterback. But you just feel like State found something and head into this year with a lot of momentum.
In fact, we just did talk to Nick Fitzgerald after we talked to Dan Mullen at his first presser of this season, and we'll go over that. I'll be writing a story, and Steve will have video filed up this afternoon as well. Let's go some of the talking points from Dan Mullen. Obviously, he had a little bit of cold today, which I think a lot of people have. I got a little sniffles myself at this point with his freaky weather, but he was in a pretty good upbeat mood, talking about he thinks practices went very well, very injury-free. As far as we know, only Malik Deer among the regulars will not be playing this week, and he's probably 2 weeks away from a decision whether he plays this season. Landon Guidry's out for the year, but he was going to be rotation at most this year. So a very healthy Bulldog team going into this season.
Yeah, you certainly think so. And, David, this time last year we were lamenting the loss of Tolando Cleveland and Cedric Giles, and it kind of forced some charges into play before they were ready. And many of those players not here any longer. So now you're going to return a depth chart with Lashard Durr and with Tolando Cleveland back, and then Cameron Dantzler, and there's some Jamal Peters, guys like that. Right. So you feel like you've got some depth there, but one of the main reasons why is because people have been healthy. And from all accounts, it's been a pretty physical camp. And so the fact that State can come out the other side of this and be no worse for wear is a big thing.
Yeah, we were all concerned about this new schedule with it being spread out like it was. Would guys get burned out? Would they kind of lose their teaching touch there? Would they, the retention from practice to practice? But it seems to have held up well. They are healthy. All right, you mentioned substitutes at the cornerback. Let's get to the position of most interest as far as substitutes. Hopefully none's needed, but in your opinion, Steve, will Keaton Thompson play in this first game? I know I have my opinion. I want to hear yours.
I think he plays. And I think one of the main reasons why is because, number one, you have to have a capable backup. And you don't want Keaton's first snaps to come against Alabama or on the road at Auburn. So to ease him in, because at some point he's probably going to play anyway, and we kind of joked earlier, Mullen kind of made mention of, tighten it up. But, Nick had a problem last year with the helmet popping off. So what do you do? And it sounds like a silly question, but
under the rules, you have to have somebody ready to run there.
Absolutely. And so, do you run your third-team quarterback out there? Do you run the Wildcat? Do you have Gabe Miles take a snaps? So not just for that reason, but I think if you want to groom Keaton Thompson, because listen, if Nick Fitzgerald has a season like many people are projecting him to have, there's always the possibility of him to test his draft status. And so, if Keaton Thompson emerges this year, that puts the Bulldogs in good shape for next year. But I think also, too, Keaton brings a different element to this team because of the fact he and Nick are a little bit different. But I think Keaton's a guy that can help this team this year, similar to what Dak Prescott did as a redshirt freshman.
Daniel was asked about, you mentioned the phrase redshirt freshman, have they made any decisions yet? And we know that coaches have a pretty good idea of who will, who won't, but still – with the makeup of this particular team, with only 12 seniors on it and a relatively mid-pack kind of roster there's still room for a lot of freshmen to play. Now, he threw out two names today. Willie Gay, no surprise. He's already going to be in the linebacker rotation. But he mentioned Tucker Day and then came back later and said there's been no specific decision made on place kicking. So maybe a little bit of a mixed message there, but I think what it basically was Mullen tipping his hand. They know who they want to win the place kicking job.
I agree, David, and I think sometimes Mullen is talking to his team, to the media, by saying we're going to see how things go in practice this week because we don't want to come out Monday and say, well, this kid's definitely going to play. And then if he doesn't play, then there's questions next Monday. I think Colin Hill's another freshman that wasn't mentioned that has a real opportunity to play. He doesn't have to play, but I think that he's good enough to play and good enough to help this team. And you mentioned Willie Gay. No surprise. That was one of the very first visits that Todd Grantham made when he arrived here at Mississippi State, was an in-home visit to go see Willie Gay to let him know that he was a real priority to the staff. So it's no surprise. And if you've seen pictures of Willie Gay on social media, he looks like a college football player. He looks college ready. So if he can get the mental part of it down, and there's no reason to think that he shouldn't, he should be a major contributor early.
Since you covered all these freshmen, and of course all the JUCO guys, with the exception of Chauncey Rivers, who, by the way, Mississippi State has now filed in a further appeal for a waiver to have him able to play. Now, just if he can't play in the first game, it's always possible second, so I'm not really concerned about that right now. We'll talk about that probably next week more on Chauncey Rivers, but we know the rest of the JUCOs will probably play now. Are there any other true freshmen you see? And let's go over some of the redshirt freshmen people have forgotten who probably will play, like a Kobe Jones.
Yeah, I think Kobe Jones is definitely in the rotation there, and he's a guy that fans have kind of been eager to see because last year he was part of a great defensive line class with Marquis Spencer and Jeffrey Simmons, and of the three, he's the only one that didn't play. And it's not that he wasn't ready, but it's just the fact that State just didn't have a needed defensive end for him last year. So, yeah, I think that he's certainly a guy that's going to step in. One thing about the red shirts, too, I think there's a real chance that JUCO guys like Tyree Phillips and Tommy Champion do redshirt this year if everybody else in front of them stays healthy, which I think bodes well for the future. But when I begin to think about this group and think about receivers like Osiris Mitchell and Reggie Todd, those are names that some almost get lost sometimes, but they're guys that I expect to see in the box score each and every week. And with that receiving core, only losing one receiver, yet it being the all-time leading receiver in school history, it's going to be a by-committee approach, and those guys will have to step up and do some big things.
Well, part of that, too, is the receiver rotation will probably change some, too, because the emphasis of this offense will be running the football. Aris Williams is the big dog. And it was interesting what Nick Fitzgerald told us. He expects as many as 4 running backs to play after Aris Williams because that's a reflection how well they've run the ball in preseason camp. So that's a lot of bodies to get out there, and you hope a Charleston Southern game allows you to do that. This won't be a pushover. And we'll talk more when we do our end of the week video going into the weekend about Charleston Southern, because right now all we have is roster and a few tips on what kind of team they're going to be. But right now we're just going to talk about the Bulldogs and what Coach Dan Mullen and what Nick Fitzgerald told us. And so are there enough snaps to go around for that many running backs in an opening game?
Yeah, I think so, and I think because of the fact it's an FCS opponent, you would like to think in the fourth quarter you can kind of put your kids up and let the kids play, put your feet up with the kids play a little bit. And I think that'll be an opportunity for those guys to get some reps on film, have an opportunity to play in a real college game when the game is not on the line, and get them some experience and kind of move them along. But I agree with Nick. I think we'll see a back-committee approach at running back just because Aris Williams is expected to get the lion's share of the carries that matter in ball games.
During the season.
Right.
You don't wear him out the first
Absolutely.
week.
You're going to save some wear and tear on him. So maybe he gets 100 yards, perhaps midway through the third quarter, and you pull him and let Dontavian Lee and Nick Gibson and those guys have an opportunity to do some big things.
And you always have to worry, and this is no slight at all on Charleston Southern or any of their peers, you always worry about a guy from an FCS level team that maybe wants to make his bones against some big-time SEC player, maybe getting carried away on the field like that. So you kind of want to guard your starters in that regard. So that's a decision the coaching staff will mention and we'll work on later in the week. We would be remiss if we didn't wrap this up by saying, Steve, this is a very big week for you and for the Bulldog Nation and for all who've been following a modest little story that has been taking shape up to our north.
It's true, David. This is a book release week, and it'll be out on Saturday. And if you haven't pre-ordered, you still can. I'm going to go sign about 3,000 books Wednesday and Thursday. But you can go to flimflamthebook.com, and you can order, and we'll have it mailed to you. If you want to wait and buy it in stores, if you're coming to Starkville this weekend, it's going to be at the Lodge. It's going to be at Campus Book Mart. It's going to be at Book Mart and Cafe. It's going to be I don't want to leave anybody out. Barnes & Noble. So there's going to be several places to buy it this weekend, and it'll be all over the state and all over the region before the month is out. But a lot of book signings coming up. As a matter of fact, every day I'm getting a new obligation, I guess you could say, but a new appointment. But I'm excited about it. It's been a lot of work. I'm very proud of the effort, and I can't wait for you guys to read it.
And just briefly, would you mind settling a few minds on there and some of you talk about flim-flam. There's been a lot of smoke flowing from certain quarters on this story. Just settle some Bulldog fans down about what they're hearing from us, just to tell them just how to tune it out if they can.
Well, I think the best thing now is just to focus on Mississippi State football, and that's what's coming up. And I know that this has been a story that's captivated everybody during the offseason, of course, with Hugh Freeze's untimely resignation and a lot of revelations that have come out associated with that. But a lot of this news that has made the rounds in the last week or so is not really news. It's information that's kind of been regurgitated from June when Ole Miss made their answer to the notice of allegations public. So it's not news. It may be new to you, but it's not news to Mississippi State. It's not news to the NCAA, and it's not news to Ole Miss. It's one of these last-gap, Hail Mary type efforts to win some points in the Court of Public Appeal. And so I think it's best just to push all that into the back and try to avoid the noise and focus on Mississippi State now.
So basically, to quote the late, great Douglas Adams, look it up, don't panic. So, and that's a reference, you may not even know what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What can I say? I've read too much in my lifetime. But you can be reading on the website this week. We'll be posting shortly a summary of what Dan Mullen had to say about the Bulldogs as they go into their first game of the season. It's a feature with Nick Fitzgerald. We posted this morning a feature on Fletcher Adams, who will be quite likely the starting defensive tackle this week in the new defense of Coach Grantham. Tonight, we get Coach Grantham as selected defensive player, so a lot of material in the next few days coming up. So it's game week Bulldogs. Yes, it's Charleston Southern. Yes, it's an FCS opponent, but it's still opening week. Make your plans to be here. And also, as Coach Mullen did begin his presser with, our thoughts and prayers are with the people of the Houston area, of the Texas coast, with the storm they're going through. I have people out there as well. So we're thinking about you. Some things are more important than football, but football is important, and it helps ease a lot of tensions in these times. So, for Steve Robertson, this is David Murray. For Gene Swindoll and Mike Nemeth and other members of the Dogs Bite Gene's Page crew, it's Game Week, Bulldog fans. Get ready.